Drawl. I love it. Okay, recording is in progress. I love doing this stuff so much. So good. Okay, just gonna make sure that we know what we're doing here. Knoxville Raceway. Need the little go red thing that says that we're live. There we go. That's a good start. See who's on poll. See who finds out for me first. Who's the first person to show? Oh, Rick DeWard and Raymond Reed is tuned in. So those guys have got quick time. Just going to make sure I'm all geared up with audio and stuff like that. Rhonda Crow is watching as well. It is it's an overcast, kind of rainy, crappy sort of a day here in Newcastle, in New South Wales, Australia. And for everybody in America, Newcastle is about 2 hours north of Sydney. And it had a great little speedway, Wayne, had a D-shape kind of track in a place called Tomago. And boy, Charlie Schwartz had a phenomenal punch on with race officials at Newcastle
Oh,
Speedway. And I bet you're probably surprised to hear that, right? Because Charlie was,
well, I didn't know who that was, but
Jack Hewitt in a late model.
there you go. Well, easy, fair enough.
Yeah.
You don't got to explain anymore.
It is really cool to have Wayne Johnson tuned in for our Wednesday night slide. And I got to say, it's a very romantic thing I see on your wall there, Wayno. I love you as much as I love racing, and I really love racing. What a
Oh,
beautiful.
I didn't realize that was it. We're in the motorhome. We're on the road, so we're in the motorhome, and I didn't realize that was even.
Oh,
I'm just at the kitchen. I'm just at the kitchen table. That wasn't
you
planned
didn't
or anything.
you didn't do that
No,
for
that
me?
wasn't. No, that wasn't planned. But yeah, I did exactly for you. Yeah, yeah. She just hung that
Yeah.
5 minutes ago.
hmm I see. Please hit share, everybody, because I really want everybody to get around this. So hit the old blue button just there as well. I'm just going to type in here. Let's catch up with Oklahoman. Something about a Oklahoman, the name Oklahoman, and we're going to talk a lot about how many great, races have come out of Oklahoma in particular. Because man, it's been a phenomenal state for not just rodeo, right? Let's catch up with
Right.
bad.
Lots of great race car drivers come from Oklahoma. I think just like Pennsylvania, it's a hotbed. We used to feed off each other's success, right?
Yeah,
So that was, wanted to be the best guy from Oklahoma.
yeah, that's cool. And there was two Oklahoma Andys, right? There was an Oklahoma, it was an Andy Hillenberg and another Andy Hillenberg, right? Our Andy
No,
Hillenberg.
no. The other hand, the Oklahoma Andy Hillenberg that run the outlaw deal, but the other Andy Hillenberg, I believe, was from Indiana.
Correct. Correct.
Yeah, yeah. It's not from Oklahoma that I remembered.
And let's face it, there's only one Andy Hillenberg. All right. Let's just put that right out there.
There's only one Andy Hillenberg wing sprint car, dirt sprint car racer. Yes, because
Correct.
the Indiana Andy Hillenberg was pretty good shoe himself on
That's
pavement.
true. That's true. I feel like I probably, yeah, you're right. But I'm just a big Andy fan. I think our Oklahoma Andy, Broken Arrow Andy, let's just put it that way. I actually visited with him back in like 2018. We drove through from LA through to Knoxville and stopped in at People's, and we went to his shop. He's a collector of great old cool old automobiles.
Yes. Yep. I actually bumped into Andy probably a year ago at the casino there in Tulsa.
Mm.
First time I'd seen him in a great while.
What were you doing in a casino, Wayne?
I think my wife was wanting to drink or something. I don't know.
Oh,
We
mm,
might have been at a concert. I really don't know. I
yeah.
know what I was doing, losing money that I didn't need to be losing. That's what it was.
Mate, what an amazing career you've had, on your own, when I say on your own, driving, but now to see that you're still further invested and you're staying in the game with the two C's team and working with young Cole Macedo. Isn't it the hardest thing to not say Cole or Carson? Whew. It's like I watched your interview on Wing Nation, and it's like, yeah, well, Cole said to Carson, I mean, then Carson said to Cole, like,
Oh yeah,
geez, oh, Pete.
yeah, no, for sure. Mutt and Jeff is what I need to start calling them.
I'm pretty sure that their mum as well, named Cole, because Days of Thunder was literally on in the birthing suite. I think she told me some story that when Cole was born, that was all part of the connection to that. But let's go back to where it started for you, Wayne, because your mum and your dad raced, yeah?
Yes. Well, Dad raced. Mom run a powder puff or two, as I was growing up, and then I had two older brothers that raced before me. So, you know, living in Oklahoma, we had Dad had junkyards and wrecker services and all that stuff. So growing up around cars and engines and all that stuff, really that's all I've ever known. So, Dad passed away in '97, and I think we kept the junkyards around till about 2000 and sold all that stuff off, and so I haven't been around that business in a long time because I went racing full time.
Man, I can only imagine some of the old wrecks that you would have hot lapped around the wrecking yard back in the day. Some of the stories just on that side of things.
Oh yeah, oh for sure. Dad would get so mad he'd buy something, and we would get it running and run into other stuff. And he's like, "I was going to sell the bed off that pickup or whatever." Well, you're not selling it now because it's smashed. Oh, he would get so mad at us.
It would be
That's
go on.
that's actually where I learned to drive. Actually, in the junkyard, just around between the cars and all that stuff, and try to go out and get something running. And we worked there all summer long as kids, and so we would just go out when it wasn't very busy and try to get one running and spun around in circles and drive through the junkyard. That's actually where I learned to drive.
There would be people over the years, Wayne, that would have believed that story that you learned to drive in a junkyard. A few rivals.
Yeah.
Oh, see, you're right, driving in the junkyard again, Johnson.
Yep.
So, your mum passed away just very recently, mate. I'm very sorry to hear that. I know that she was incredibly special to you. I cannot even imagine what a character she was, mate. Holy cow.
Oh, she was. She loved racing, and she never missed a race. Dirt Vision or Flow or whatever it was that she could tune in and watch. And there was many times that we'd be at the races and something that would happen to her feet or whatever, and she was on the phone with my wife trying to get it figured out. And it was pretty. And she couldn't get it back on. It was a bad day, but she loved Johnny Gibson, and she just loved the outlaw deal. She loved the music and the way he does it. And, his, I don't even know how you say it, but just loved it. And Johnny, I think Johnny the other night, it was very special that he had mentioned her the other night after her passing, and that meant a lot to me, but would have meant a lot to her too. And I don't even know what to say about it other than it's probably one of the toughest things other than losing my dad, that I've ever went through. So um, there's a big void right now in my heart, but I know she's in a better place.
You talk a lot about your dad's was the early influence for you with racing. What did he start off in and whereabouts in Oklahoma did he race?
Well, there at Oklahoma City, and then there was a little track. Well, I guess the first racetrack that I ever went to as a kid and watched a race or watched my dad race was Goldsby, which is just south of Norman there on I-35, and watched some races there. That's where I watched my mom race. And then I guess as he could afford it, I'm not really sure because I was pretty young then, but as we could afford better cars, the next thing you know, we were racing Oklahoma City. And then the next thing you know, my brothers were racing the half mile, and it just evolved from there. But, Dad had drag race cars before I was born. And then I know he started out in late models and then went to modifieds. And then I think he never raced anything but a modified without a wing. And then as my brothers got old enough to race, then we got wing super modifieds. Well, which those were 100-inch cars back then, which I know you were familiar with those around Oklahoma City. And then I didn't get into the sprint cars until like around 95 or something.
Ooh, don't do the maths, mate. That's 30 years.
Oh yeah, it's been a long time. I've been racing sprint cars, or I should say, I call them big cars because the 100-inch cars were like a sprint car, just the wheelbase was longer. But I've been racing since 1987.
So 87, to put this in context, with a great friend of ours, who when you phone a person that we know, a good friend of ours, and he'll pick up the phone and go, "This is Shane." Shane Carson. He actually raced in Perth in Western Australia in the World Sprint Car Championship. Was tied up with the America's Cup for yachts and the whole bit. And the Jeff Tuttle came down and raced as well. And some 15-year-old kid called Jeff Gordon raced in that event as well. And Kramer Williamson. It was like just this mega event down there. So when you go back to that sort of period, that's what I remember when I very first met Shane. But your brother, you were saying to me as well, you both your brothers raced as well. Like your whole family has raced, yeah?
Yes. I had an older brother named Bud, and he raced before. He was the first one of the brothers got to race because he was the oldest. And then my brother Mike is the middle brother. He got to race before me, of course. And then, I was 6 years younger than Michael, so I was really pushing the buttons. Hey, I'm ready to go. I'm ready to go. So it's a funny story. My dad and my name were the same, so I wasn't old enough to get in the pits. Actually, I'd never been in the pits, and we built a car over the winter. And I was 14 and a half years old, and I weighed about 100 pounds. And the way we got in is I just drove the race rig to the pits, or from my house to the track by myself, pulled up there, walked up like I owned the place, bought a pit pass, and gave them all my dad's information. They didn't ask for they didn't ask my date of birth or anything. They just wanted your name and your social security number where they could pay you. And I just gave them all that stuff, drove right to the pits, and next thing you know, I'm racing. And then a year and a half later, when I turned 16, we told them I was 16, and they were all big-eyed, going, "Oh my God, this kid's been racing for a year and a half." But that's only. So that's only. But if they wouldn't let me race, Dad was. I don't know what Dad was going to do because he couldn't have handled it for another year and a half of me not getting to race.
So the ability to bullshit, Wayne, has been a lifelong obsession of yours.
Yes, yes. Hey, that's how I've got to where I'm at. I bullshitted my way all the way through this stuff because hell, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just guessing at it and doing the best I can.
It was a different time though, right? They weren't going to get your phone and check your age or anything like that. That was a very different, incredibly simplistic time in life, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's crazy. We had this conversation earlier. We're sitting out around the motorhomes eating dinner, and cell phones are, just like we're going to Canada here in a couple of weeks. And I said, you got to have all your stuff lined out because we were talking about going to Australia as well. I can remember going to Australia and bringing a seat and some shocks, and I used to bring fuel pumps in my suitcases and stuff to sell. And
Yeah.
they're like, where are you going? "Oh, I'm just going over here to race." And they're like, "You making money?" I'm like, "No, I'm just coming over here to have fun." And they just let you go in. Well, back now with all the social media, you better have all your ducks in a row to go. But yeah, it's definitely a different time. And uh, I don't know if it's a better place or not, honestly, but we couldn't do this back then.
Yeah, that's the positive, Wayne. And since COVID, the world has gotten smaller, and we can do a lot of these, things remotely, which is exactly how we're doing it. But my kids are, 25, 23, 21, 19, around that age frame. I got to be honest, I think I lived in a better time growing up as a kid where things were just so much more simple and there wasn't that accountability, there wasn't that negativity, and people just seemed to be happy in themselves.
Yeah, I think it's definitely. I agree with you 100%. I can remember sitting out under the grandstands at Knoxville because remember the role of the payphones to call home and tell them how good I did, or how bad I did, or whatever. Now, I mean, now they know before you're finished, the race is over.
Yeah.
But it was definitely more simple. I don't know how these kids get away with anything.
Yeah, I mean, you do something, it immediately, ends up on the internet and blasted around everywhere. I mean, I know that there was a period there where you were into bicycling for a little bit. That seemed to make a few headlines as well. So there's all sorts of pit activities and stuff that you're kind of famous for. Moving right
Yeah,
along.
I don't. That gets brought up all the time, and you know what? I'm just honestly a little bit ashamed, honestly, about that to act the way that we did, or I did, but it was a spur of the moment, heat of the moment thing, or whatever. And the worst part of that whole thing is like what you said. If it would happen just back in our times we're talking about, it was no big deal. But
Yeah.
the thought process of, and then some conversations I had with people about, and we're not bringing up any names, but his family's home watching on TV. Makes you feel really small after you hear those things. Kids watching that thing. It's definitely part of the. Can't take it back now, but it definitely there for a little while. It definitely, and then everyone brings it up still to this day, and it's makes you feel pretty, or makes me feel sometimes pretty small.
Wayne, Jack Hewitt is a great example, right? Jack is he's very embarrassed about the KMD thing, right? And to the point where he has often said to me, and Jody as well, that he doesn't want that to be his legacy. Like the kids can look on the internet, type up Jack Hewitt, first thing comes up is the way he spoke about that USAC official, and I said, Jack, those of us that were there in your career remember a fierce, passionate, uncompromising, incredible badass. They don't recall one incident and define you for it. And your life has been like that too. You're a fiery Oklahoman. You're a guy that's kind of up and about, and sometimes that's the way things happen. And when you look at it over the years, no one's going to define your career. I understand what you're saying there, but it's so good that we can look back on a lot of the historical stuff. I mean, how much of that early stuff of your racing is on the net?
Right, not a lot. That's the thing. There's winning those prelim of the Knoxville Nationals. I've Googled it. I can't find it. There's just and it wasn't that long ago. I mean, we're talking. Remember, I'm gonna say '08 or something like that. So
Yep,
we're talking. What is that? What I can't do math. What is that? 10 years ago, 15 years? I don't know.
15, yeah,
17. 17.
Yeah.
My wife's in the background. 17
I know.
years ago.
I knew that's what happened.
Don't seem like it was yesterday, right? But at the end of the day, like you said, I don't want to be known from that, and I get a lot of, I shouldn't say grief, but honestly, when somebody brings it up, because it happens a lot, it's almost embarrassing, honestly, and it's just unfortunate that it happened. Did it happen? And I gotta say, yeah, it happened. And I gotta own it. But at the end of the day, wasn't a proud moment of mine, especially because of all the social media stuff. And I don't want, like you said, like Jack, and I want that to be, I want a lot of races in my career, and I want to be known from those, you know what I mean? But it doesn't seem to, that one thing sure defines a lot of things at the moment.
Yeah. You would remember that, the TNN stuff was so good with Steve Evans, and They Walked Away, that incredible And They Walked Away tape and TV show. And I was at Knoxville last year, and I met John Sinnett. And for me, all I remember was John going through the fence, that huge crash that everybody had in turn one. And just, I remember Steve Evans, almost like a train wreck. I think that was Brock that said that. And I was like, holy cow, that's you. I remember we were standing probably 100 feet from where that all happened. Now, did that define his career? God, no, it didn't. But it was still something I can look back on and go, that's pretty cool. I met the guy that was in one of the most incredible, iconic wrecks at Knoxville.
Right. Talking about the craziest things ever, growing up, Steve Kinzer was my hero.
Mm-hmm.
I even had a race car that was painted like his at one point. I had a helmet that was painted like his at one point. I mean, he was my hero. Well, I'm parked at Kinzer Racing. He's a great friend of mine today. We get to hang out and have a vodka and share stories. And it's not a lot of things happen like that in a lot of people's careers. So it's pretty cool that the racing community is so small, but that we became, as I've evolved as a race car driver, then become friends with your hero. And it's pretty cool, that we're sitting here and we barbecued today, and you know what I mean? It's just all those things make the person that you are, you, me, whoever. And that's what racing and being involved with the sport for me is meant to me, all the relationships.
Yeah.
And I can honestly say that I've only ever been fired from one car in my lifetime. And but it's pretty easy to say with the guy Forbrooks car, everyone got fired from that car. So but just honest to God truth, I can pick up the phone and call every car owner, every sponsor that I've ever had, and still friends with them to this day. And I feel like that's a big accomplishment, because I know a lot of guys can't.
To your point, that's the thing I love the most about our sport, is you can become friends with your heroes. Now, it's one thing to say you raced with them and you became your hero, but as a fan, like, you couldn't think, oh, that Patrick Mahomes looks like a pretty good dude. I'll add him on Facebook. I'll go up and see him at a game. I might buy a T-shirt. We'll hang out. You can't do that in Formula One. You can't do that in NASCAR. You can't do that, in IndyCar and things like that. But in our sport, you absolutely can become friends with your heroes. And to the point, at Knoxville a couple of years ago, Mark Webber was there, like the Australian Formula One, rock star back in the day. All Mark Webber wanted to do was meet Steve Kinzer. And you go, dude, you're Mark Webber. But the goat is the goat, Wayne, right?
Yep, that's right. There's no denying that. I mean, it's I don't even know how to say it. I've never had any other than my dad. He was my hero, of course, but
yeah,
I had no other, sporting and all that stuff. I mean, I played baseball, football, wrestled, all that stuff, but at the end of the day, I had no heroes in stick and ball sports, right? I wanted to be a race car driver, and Steve Kinzer was the man. So, but to get to, like you said, you can hang out, have a beer. I don't know how many people have come into my pit area after the races, and and they come in and bring me an ice cold beer right after the race or whatever, and want to shoot the shit. So you do, because I remember those times of I was in that spot, right? Come in, hang out, want to visit, and I struggle with that sometimes, just because if you have 50 people there that want to visit, and I feel like I got to visit with every one of them, and it's like, oh, that's the thing that I really did struggle with, and it was hard for me to do because I want to spend equal amount of time with everyone.
Yeah, and Sammy makes that point a lot too, Wayne, that you can't just walk into someone's business, right, necessarily, and just walk straight through the shop and go in and start BSing with people. Whereas his life in that pit area, people just can walk right up to him in the middle of about to strap in and go out to an A main to earn his living. So he said he wasn't necessarily back in the day very good at that stuff, and we all know the stories of Sammy. But these days he's so much more accessible to that. I think he realizes that, hey, I'm not going to be able to do this forever like I originally thought I would. But the accessibility of our sport, Wayne, is one of its true treasures, I think.
Yeah, for sure. And you know what? There's been a lot of times you turn people away during the races, and just say, hey, come back after the races because I'm busy and, trying to focus. And I still do that to this day because, there's still I still got a lot of fans and still got a lot of friends that live in every state that you go to. And they want to, they all want to come and be involved. And, I got lots of friends. I want to come work on the race car. And I'm like, man, we really appreciate you wanting to come and work, but, we have a team here and everybody has a job. And it's not like it used to be. When you come in, you disrupt the flow of everything, and next thing you know, something gets left off or whatever. And it's not that you're being rude or anything. It's just, the team is a fine, and I'm learning this a lot more because when I was a driver, mechanic, or however you want to do that, or however you want to say that, I was different. And now I'm like, wait a minute, now this guy's job is to keep the wheels on this thing, and if he's over there bull crapping, did he remember or did he forget? So I guess you could say I might have become a little bit of an asshole being a crew chief or whatever, making sure my guys are doing their job. But at the end of the day, if something happened to Cole, I would feel bad because it's my job to make sure that all the things are done right. So, there's a lot of moving parts. But at the end of the day, anybody wants to come to the pit area and bullshit, we're gonna do that. But a lot of times my guys are ready to load up and get out of there because they know, that's another thing. There's so little time from night to night, so to do all the maintenance and wash and do all that stuff, those guys are ready to get out of there too. So it's definitely a balancing act. But at the end of the day, we're going to let anybody come down and hang out afterwards for a bit anyway.
It's a lot like when you become a parent, right? You have when you're a single person and all you're doing is focused on your own stuff. Suddenly you become a parent and you go, wow, there's something way more important than me right now. And it does flip all the priority list completely upside down. So right now you're kind of going through being a parent again because you've got this young kid who's a hell of a young talent. Fortunately for you, he's got his big brother on the road with him as well, who can sort of shelter a little bit of that load. But you're kind of a parent again now.
Yeah, for sure. Everyone thinks that Cole Macedo brought $1 million to this race team to make this happen. Well, I can tell you right now, that is not the truth. We didn't ask him for any money. Cole has been on my radar. I think me and you had this conversation 4 or 5 years ago. I was already thinking about retirement and how that was going to work out. Unfortunately, I was too stupid to quit before I got hurt. And I think getting hurt was the good Lord saying, by God, it's time for you to slow down or do something different. But, he was on my radar and I watched him for a couple, 2 or 3 years. And then it's crazy how things happened at East Bay last year. The last race at East Bay, he needed a ride to the hotel or something. And he rode with me and my wife. And I said, we're going to stop at Chili's and eat. Do you want to stop and eat with us? So that's where I actually met him and got to visit with him. And I was like, and when we left there, he left the impression on me that this kid has a fire in his belly.
Yeah.
Like I did, he wants it worse than, and that's part of a little bit of our problem right now. He wants it so bad that he thinks that he should be able to just drive by all these guys, and I'm like, dude, we're building this team and it's going to happen. We just it's a building process. It's going to take a minute, but he doesn't want it. I mean, he wants it now. And I can appreciate it. And the kid, he has no give up. And that's the part that I really like. I don't know if you can hear that on the motorhome. We're getting a big storm here right now.
Oh,
But like I say, he's a part of the family, you know, and I'm having a ball with him, and sometimes he's a little oh, I'm not even sure what the word that I'm looking for, but uh, oh, I don't even know how to say it. He's got his own ideals a lot of times, and sometimes
yeah.
he's off a little bit, or I'm off a little bit. But honestly, the big thing that we're working on now is he's got to trust me as much as I trusted him to hire him. And I think we're building it because the last few nights we're really starting to get there.
It's probably breaking up a little bit at your end. I hope it's not the reception with that storm that's coming. Luch Monty is tuned in watching. I know that you would have, everyone's got a fond Luch Monty story, Wayno, and you would have met him, you know, when you raced in Australia as well, a guy that's been a phenomenal contributor to Australian sprint car racing. So it's cool to see that
Hey,
Luch,
wait, can
yeah.
you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
I'm getting every other word. I'm switched this thing off of the internet, or my wife is. It gets you on
Yeah, cool.
let's go to we're going to try to get it better here because we have internet on the motorhome here, and I think that it's
The storm.
what are we doing here?
I'm trying to get to this.
She knows what she's doing. It'll be the storm that'll be causing the problem on the motorhome internet. That's what'll be going on there for sure. No, I know you'll come back, so that's the good news. Hopefully that storm won't be too much of a problem, but I know he'll be back here in a second. I'm almost certain of that. So just cool to catch up with Wayne. The Knoxville season is already well underway. That's what we're here kind of to talk about, as well as the other stuff with Wayne. So I'm hoping that he drops back in here in just a moment. How cool, Rico? Hey, geez, how good is his form right now? Already kicking off the deal with a couple of wins. So I'm hoping that in a second Wayne will drop back in and that storm won't mess us up too bad, because he's a phenomenal character and a phenomenal talent. So I know he'll be back here in a second. When you look at his win list and his achievements, it is quite incredible to think. I was doing a bit of homework thanks to Brian Holbert on all this. National ASCS champion and Knoxville 360 Nationals winner. Won the second national tour event ever held in '93 at Lone Star Speedway. More national A feature starts than anyone. 552. 59 wins in 16 states. Here we go. He's back. I knew this had to happen.
Okay, we're back. I hear him, but I don't see him.
Well, I can hear you. We just can't see you, which is, you know, probably not a bad thing.
Easy. Oh, well, there you go. We're back. Sorry.
I was just bullshitting while you went away somewhere. Well, it's a big storm coming. Whereabouts are you?
I'm in Bloomington at Steve's shop. So Bloomington, Indiana, and there's a big storm south of here right now. And I think there's a tornado warning, and we're hanging out in the motorhome. So go figure.
Proper. I remember being at Attica in '96 for an All-Stars show, and All-Stars were mega in the early mid-'90s, you know. And
Yes.
all of a sudden the sky went all green. And like there's a siren going and people are running everywhere. And I'm like, what's this? You know, as an Aussie, you're like, what's this? And Danny Smith walks past, he goes, tornado. And I'm like, huh. Next minute, he just gets into his race car and just belts down. He goes, the way I figure it, this is the safest place I can be. Now, living in Oklahoma, which is part of Tornado Alley, tornadoes are not a big thing for you. I mean, they're big, but for you, that's kind of life in Oklahoma, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, for sure. You know, it's I don't even know how to say it. Kenny had a friend of mine from Melbourne there that comes and races with me every year, and he was in Oklahoma last year or the year before. We had a big tornado cell coming at us at my house, and my wife's in the storm shelter, and me and Kenny are out on the porch looking up to see if we see it, because I'm not going anywhere until I see it. And about that time we seen it, we run to the storm shelter, get in it, and ain't even got the door shut. And he goes, mate, my passport. I go, oh, shit, I got some money in there. So we run back in the house. He gets his passport. I get this bank bag of money I got, and we run back in this storm shelter. Not very bright. And there was a tornado right there, but nothing ever happened. But we get them, I don't know, a couple of hundred tornadoes in the state of Oklahoma every year. So
Wow.
fortunate enough that I've never had one hit my house or anywhere near me, but I've actually seen them before, for sure.
So I was running through your some of your credentials, mate. It's quite incredible for a man so young to have had 552 national A feature race starts, 59 wins in 16 states, 272 top fives, 414 top tens on the national tour, 42 regional wins, and 13 wins in a 360 at Knoxville. You'll be good one day.
Yeah, I definitely can say that had a really good career. Just wished would have lived in the hotbed of sprint car racing
Huh.
growing up. We wasn't. We still, I till 1992. I was the 1992 State Fair Speedway track champion in a 100-inch wheelbase car,
Yep.
and that was 92. Sprint cars were pretty big all over the country, but we were stuck in the 100-inch car because that's what everyone did around home. So really didn't really get started till the mid 90s in sprint cars, and then but yeah, no, I had a great career. The only regret that I have in any kind of racing, and I'm going to get one, it's just not going to be as a driver, but I've never had, I never had a World of Outlaw win that counted. I won an all-star race at Volusia when all the Outlaws were there. I won the prelim night of the Knoxville Nationals, but never won a race that is on the World of Outlaw win list. But I've got a feeling that, for too long we may get one here as a crew chief.
I got to say hello to Meridel Folkets. Now, Meridel, for people that ever go to Knoxville Raceway, if you're lucky enough to ride in the elevator, at some point you'll meet Meridel because she sits inside that elevator all day, just up and down, up and down. She's always got a big old smile on her face. And I remember just recently, Tony Stewart actually said, "Get out and take a rest, Meridel, take a break." And he sat there and did Meridel's job. So people walk in the elevator, they're like, "Hey, Tony." Like, what? So Meridel does an amazing job, like so many people do at Knoxville Raceway. Wayne, Oklahoma has become a focal point in the last couple of decades for a different reason. The Chili Bowl is without a doubt one of the most iconic events in the world of dirt racing. Hasn't that thing just exploded?
Oh yeah, just from the time that, I don't remember the first year that I went, but it was pretty early, to now it's amazing to me that they can cram all those people and all those rigs in there and make that happen as efficient as it does, right?
Yeah.
They do a great job with that. I'm telling you, it was. I can remember when there may have been 3,000 people in the stands, and I don't maybe not even that many. Honestly, I don't
Yeah.
remember exactly, but it has definitely evolved. I look at the dollars that those people are making off that thing, and I'm like, Jesus Christ! I wish I'd have thought of this thing.
You have a great connection to all of that world, to the Han side of things, because the ASCS became one of the most iconic sanctioning brands and championships in the world of sprint car racing, and it was vitally important that 360 culture was fostered, wasn't it?
Yes, it was, and that's what groomed my career to get me out in the spotlight and winning those 360 races and those championships and stuff. Definitely, because kid from Oklahoma would have never got to go World of Outlaw racing. We didn't have big budgets or, didn't have lots of money to go World of Outlaw racing, or even, I think we had a 410 sprint car at one time because I think I took all my earnings all my savings and everything and bought a 410. And we ran the slick 50 thing.
Oh yeah.
One year I won. I don't remember what year it was, 91, or it was when it was at Canyon. It wasn't at oh, I can't remember where it was now, but
Phoenix or something, wasn't it? Didn't it run
yeah,
Arizona?
they're in Phoenix, but it was at Canyon. It was at the smaller track, and I spent every penny. I don't remember how old I was, but I spent every penny that I had to get to do that. And my dad gave me or my mom gave me a credit card. I said, "You guys go have fun." And what was it, 10 races or something? And I think I paid that credit card off for about 30 years.
There's two things I remember about the Slick 50 deal was Jeff Swindell's commentary, because I think he did a great job with that. And I remember when they would go to commercial at a wreck, you would see the tractor dragging, like skull dragging the cars because they had to get back for live TV, remember? So the driver would be running behind the car on the hook, like just trying to get off the track because when we come back off the commercial, we're going green. So even that was ahead of its time, wasn't it?
Oh, for sure. And that's what I wanted to be a part of, because I knew if I could get my name out there, maybe something would evolve from that, get a ride or whatever. And, we went out there on an open trailer, and from Oklahoma to Arizona on open trailer, not a lot of money. One thing that stands out, I'll never forget it. Sammy was driving the GNW trucking car, and the GNW trucking car was from right there in Oklahoma City. And I think I only made the feature one time out of 6 or 7 or whatever it was. Well, I didn't have any money. I come through the B main, and it was rubber down, and we rolled in the pits, and the tire rack is empty, and the tires on the car are bald. I'm like, I guess we're just starting in the back with these tires, and then we're going to go as long as they go. And we're parked next to Sammy, and being Steve Kinzer fan,
Yep.
Sammy was not on my radar, but Sammy come over there to look at my tires to see what he was going to do for the feature or whatever, and he said, "What are you going to put on for the feature?" And I'm like, "These right here. It's all I got." And believe it or not, he went over and got a set of brand new wheels and tires for the rear, brought them over and said, "Put these on." And after the race was over, they were wore out tires, so I took them off the car. We broke them down. It was just me and one of my buddies broke them down and took the wheels back over to Sammy. And he's like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "I'm giving your wheels back. I can't give the tires back. They're no good." He's like, "I gave them. I gave you the wheels and tires." And so Steve Kinzer was my hero, but then Sammy was pretty cool after that as well, because he didn't have to do that. So, there's a lot, and going back to what we talked about, family and all that stuff, but just like Sammy, people with Sammy get a bad rap because he's so quiet or whatever, but he's really a super nice guy.
It must have conflicted you though at the time, because it's like, Steve is like Superman, and he's the evil, the kryptonite on the other side of that equation.
Yes, it was. And I'm still trying to come up through sprint car race and try to make a name for myself. And Steve Kinzer's my hero. And then the next thing you know, Steve didn't bring me them tires, Sammy did. And I was, it was pretty crazy. But then I became a fan of both, and I could see both sides of how that worked. And sometimes, through my career, I've been the villain, and there's been times that I've been the Superman, so yeah, it's everything. That's how you learn and evolve from everything. But that's my best Slick 50 memory that I have is Sammy giving me those tires and wheels. So pretty cool.
One of my favorite Knoxville memories ever was only something I ever saw on TV. Was a 3 wide race they had between Sammy, Doug, and Steve. They started them 3 wide and ran them for 3 laps, and then formed them back up, 3 laps and formed them back up. And it was the first one to win 2 of them. Did you ever recall seeing that?
I'd never seen that. We probably didn't even have TV back then.
So guess who won that was the first guy to win 2 out of Sammy, Doug, and Steve?
If I was going to guess, because Wolfgang's another, he's there, and I'm going to say probably Wolfgang did it, but Wolfgang's the same guy. He always has been.
Yep.
Never one time have I've never ever since I met Doug Wolfgang as a race car driver, I've not seen him in the pit area where he hasn't punched me in the stomach to make sure I was still working out. Every time. I haven't seen him in a couple, 2 or 3 years, maybe a little longer than that, but every time he'd come punch me in the gut. "You've been working out, Johnson?" "Yeah, I've been working out, trying to stay in shape to do this," because he was always on my butt that if you didn't stay in shape, you couldn't do this. But it's just pretty crazy that I've been doing this long enough that I can consider all 3 of those guys friends, and I can walk right up and talk to them anytime I want, where when I was a kid, man, I just got like this. I was just big-eyed stars and just like, man, they're superheroes to me,
To start with, you're right. It was Doug. He was the first one to win it. It was a bit of a black deal. The track was a day event, and I think it was like a $5,000 to win concept or something. What a great idea. And if there's anywhere in the world you could do it, Knoxville's it. I would love to see something similar to that again, to run a 3 wide challenge like that. But I got the chance to go to Doug's house with Doug Clark, and we pulled up out the side of Wolf's house, and it's just a normal looking suburban house. There's no flags, there's no anything. And I pull up, and Doug Clark looks at me, and I'm laughing. And he looks at me and goes, "What are you laughing at?" And I'm like, "Oh, I don't know. I'm just sitting outside Doug Wolfgang's house with Doug Clark. No big deal." And we walked in, and I had practiced the night before, Wayne, going, "G'day, Doug, I'm Wade. Hi, Wolfie, I'm Wade. G'day, Mr. Wolfgang." I'm trying to run through my brain, how I'm going to meet him, because Doug says to me, "You want to meet Wolfgang?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I do." So finally, I walk up. I'm so nervous, and he's just in the garage. I think he was like doing stretching or something because he's into his fitness big time. And I said, "Oh, g'day, Doug." He goes, "There it is." And I was like, "Huh?" And he goes, "He's a real one," talking about my accent, you know. So he didn't want to talk about himself at all. And there's nothing in his house. There's no memorabilia. There's no trophies. There's no helmets. There's nothing. There's little die
Really?
cast that his grandson plays with. He's a big Casa Macedo fan. He watches a bit of racing, but he hates the spotlight being on him. He goes, "Why would people make me a hero for something I was going to do anyway?"
Well, I guess I'd be guilty of saying he's a hero because that's,
Same.
I don't know how. I mean, I don't even know what you would say about that. I mean, that's same thing. You know what I really believe it is because just like Sammy, shy.
Mm-hmm.
He's a shy guy,
Yep.
and
Yes.
that's probably a lot of it with Doug. He's never shy with me, always punches on me, but maybe it's just the shy stuff, and I don't know that I don't think I have a shy bone in my body because I wasn't Steve Kins or Doug Wolfgang or Sammy Swindell. I wasn't that successful, so I had to make relationships by bullshitting, like we talked about. So they just did it on the track, and times were different then too.
Yeah.
But I really believe that Doug's career would have been as big as Sammy and Steve's, maybe even bigger if not getting hurt, but also the times that I remember Doug, Doug was just very some of the cars he drove wasn't the best cars, but he
Mhm.
still won the race, and so he was always trying to find that better car. He was trying to find the oh, I don't know. Sammy worked on all his stuff, but then, uh, the just the better team. Because he knew that with Carl and Steve, it was going to take a better team to beat him consistently. He could beat him every once in a while, but he was always looking for that better team to be able to beat Steve and Carl, and that's what I think that cut it. Not only those that doing that, but his being hurt also cut him short. But I really believe that Doug would have been. It's still the top three. If we're talking about Mount Rushmore, you put those three guys there for me, and unfortunately, I know a lot of people are not Donnie Schatz fans, but Donnie Schatz has to go right up there with them in my thought process.
Yeah, absolutely. When you think back to Doug's racing, he was always very gracious and very humble with it was the guys on his team. And I remember him always thanking Deuce Terrell, always saying, if you're going to interview me, you need to interview Deuce as well. And Deuce was actually at the Knoxville breakfast, the Breakfast of Champions that Doug Clark runs every year at the church across the road from the raceway. And I saw the other day that Deuce Terrell was following something I was doing, and it kind of made me a bit giddy, because Deuce worked with Deuce has worked with thousands of drivers over the years, but he was really a megastar with Wolfie.
Oh, for sure. Not only him. There's been so many good mechanics,
Mm-hmm.
and my brain is not firing right now. Kenny Woodruff. You
Mm-hmm.
know, uh,
Yeah.
so many good. I'm just not thinking of any, but there was so many good mechanics that just like Deuce. I got to meet Deuce, talk to him a lot about. I think even within the last couple of years, he's messaged me about hey, I watched your car and it looks like you need to do this or that and the other. And Kenny Woodruff, I got to work with Kenny, got to drive Natalie's car. So I worked with a legend, and you talk about butt heads, man, you talk about stubborn. He was a stubborn dude, but he's part of my growth in this sport that I'll never forget that, he's taught me a lot of things. And it's pretty cool. Just like with Deuce, like I said, he messaged me just a couple of years ago watching the races on TV or something and said, mate, I know you're struggling a little bit. Maybe you ought to try this. And so, but no, there's with 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 Wolfgang. If you say Wolfgang's name, you basically got to say Deuce Terrell as well, right?
Yep. It's when you think about legendary cats that are still around, thank God, Davey, over in Pennsylvania. You got incredible engine builders like Charlie Garrett that are, in their 80s now and still so incredibly passionate. And it was great that Donnie Kreitz kept, Davey, hands on with working on that side of things as well. So there are so many people that I wish we could just put all in one room and have the industry stand up and go, You people,
Yes.
right? That's the beauty of our sport, legends like that.
Well, I've told Johnny Gibson this since I was on the Outlaw Trail 3, 4 years ago, or whatever it was. I said, Johnny, you need to go and talk to the higher ups because you got all the equipment to do it.
Yep.
And unfortunately, Rick Ferkel passed away since then. But I
Yeah.
said, you need to go document and have these conversations like me and you
Yep.
with all of those guys where we have something to show further generations because, we've lost Ferkel and we're not going to have those stories.
Yeah.
And man, I've got, Ferkel helped me for a year and, all the things that he taught me and we talked about and, you know,
Yeah.
but all those guys, and then, Kenny Woodruff, don't have him now, and I told Johnny, I said, man, you've got everything you need. You guys need to be working on it. And I don't know ever what happened, but I haven't seen anything. So I really believe that they should really start working on that. Cause Steve Kinzer,
Yeah.
just like here, some of the stories of he's telling us this week while we're here and showing me stuff, and this guy's got more memorabilia. You're talking about Wolfgang. There's millions of dollars worth of memorabilia here that it's just amazing to me.
Lynn Paxton passed away, just fairly recently as well, and from Pennsylvania, who's just I had the great pleasure. Kendra Jacobs said, when you go to PA, I'm going to hook you up with Lynn Paxton, get Lynn to take you through the museum and the whole bit. And what a humbling, incredible man, and was so passionate about racing. The thing with the Kinsers, Wayne, and you're good friends with them, is they're very private. Like Steve doesn't seek the spotlight. In fact, he's worse than he ever was now. He doesn't. And it breaks my heart. I'm in the middle at Knoxville and I look around, Steve just standing there in the shadows. And I'm like, hello, that's the GOAT. He just sits like seeing Babe Ruth just roll up to a major league game. It's like, but he doesn't, and Craig doesn't look for the spotlight. That family has
Not at
never
all.
been that way.
Not at all. We rolled up here and he was so happy to see us, and hang out and everything. But he just, like lunch today, we ate lunch, we grilled out here. And the next thing you know, he didn't say anything. And where'd Steve go? Next thing you know, he's buzzing up through the yard on the mower. He's cutting the grass, and I'm like, hey, my hero's cutting the grass here. You'd think somebody else would be doing that. Get off that. Let me have that mower, but
Yeah.
he just, I tell you what, I know he's getting up there in age, but from daylight to dark, he doesn't stop around here. He's working his butt off.
For a different reason, my goat is the wild child. When I saw Jack run Eldora for the first time, that changed my life. To see the way he just, well, he drives around, he walks around with those two things in a wheelbarrow, in the front of his body. So I got to visit with him with Brad Doty in Worcester last year before, and he was sitting on an old rocking thing out the front of his house. I'm like, no. I don't want to see the wild child sit on a rocking chair. No. And he gets out of his chair and he's like, Wade. And I was like, is this really happening? Like, is my, my guy doing that with me? And that comes back to your point about how lucky we are to be friends with our heroes, mate.
Yes, so much, all of those guys, just like Jack, he's invited me to his house before and hung out and had some beers and,
Yeah.
And Jack wasn't my guy, hey, like I said, Steve Kinzer was my guy, but
Yeah.
it's still really cool. But you're right. I still don't know where he puts those things. You see him walking through the pit area, even when he was a race car driver. I'm like, man, he's 114 pounds. Where does he put those things?
My first ever outlaw experience was at the Beertown Showdown at Wisconsin, Hales Corners, Wisconsin, in 1992. And I just remember walking into the venue and seeing the TMC car, the Valvoline car, the two winners team, the Eldon Pennzoil 22, and just going, they're real. Because in Australia, Wayne, all we had was Open Wheel magazine. It was our only way of keeping in touch with American racing. So it was kind of like walking into an enclosure at the zoo and going, oh, there's the Bengal tiger. Like there's that white polar bear. And you go, they're real. And so when you are out there on the road racing with these guys, there must have been at some point where you had to get away from the hero worship of it and go, I'm good enough to be here and I need to beat that guy that's my hero.
Yeah, it was tough though. It really was. Line up next to Steve Kinzer on the front row of a prelim of the Knoxville Nationals. I'm like, a little bit in awe because I'm on the front row. But
Yeah.
when I drove the Beaver car, we went back and forth, back and forth. I think we changed the lead. I think it was 2001 or two. I can't remember, but we changed the lead for a prelim night like 12 times. And I still, me and him crack about it, but now I'm like, I used to think people can say they raced against Steve Kinser, but can they say they passed Steve Kinser? And then I go, I passed him 12 times in one race, but he passed me too, but it's like, it was just, and honestly, I have a picture on my wall that night that I won the prelim night. He ran second. And I have a picture on my wall. It was me and my car owner and him. And my wife will tell you, it's how big is that picture, honey? It's the biggest picture we have in the house. And it's right there in my house because it's my hero, but it was definitely intimidating, but I knew this is what I wanted to do. And I could never live up to what those guys have accomplished or whatever. But I feel good about what I have done in this sport. And,
Yeah.
and I feel good about what's happening and moving forward. And not to put any shadow on what we talked about and what I've done in the past, but with what we have now, I never was in the situation that I am now as a driver. I never had a crew chief. I never had the right people around me.
Yeah.
We had to burn the midnight oil just to make it. And now Cole, he flies in and flies out, and that's what I want him to do because I know as a driver. And that's what I told him. I said, I want you to show up at 4:00 every race day and smell like a French whore and be ready to go. And
what does that smell like, Wayne?
I'm not sure what that sounds like, but no, I just, it comes from Donnie Schatz. I've watched over the years.
Yes.
Donnie flies in his plane. He's one of the last ones to walk in the pit area.
Yep.
And he looks like he just got out of the shower. And that's what I told Cole, that's what you need to do at this level. Because when I tried to do it as a 50-year-old guy, which I was too old, I was not only trying to drive the truck, I was trying to mechanic the thing, trying to drive it, trying to do it all. And at this level, you can't do it. There's a few guys that do pretty well doing it, but it's just night in and night out. You just can't do that. And that's where I'm excited about what's going on. I'm having a ball. I didn't think that I would.
Yeah.
I thought, man, not driving, you're not in the limelight. And it's really cool to stand on top of that wing and shake your fist in the air and all that stuff. But, watching that car go around and going, man, I made that car go around. I mean, I know Cole's driving it, but I'm working on that thing, and I'm proud of it, and I'm excited about what's going on. And, I think I don't know, I'm pretty excited about what's going forward with the 2C team and Cole, Macedo, and our whole team is really starting to gel. And I'm pumped as much as if I was driving that thing, and it's pretty cool.
To your point about being fresh on race day, there's a team that won on the weekend in PA that's with an old guy that's was not so scruffy anymore. He looks a lot more, without the beard and all that sort of stuff. But Bobby Allen was a guy that would sleep under the trailer. That those guys never had money for a motel room. They would sneak in when people left the motel room door open and have a shower in someone's room and stuff like that. But there's a guy that's just it's so deep in his DNA that scruffy guys like that, they won't be around forever. You just want them to be around as long as they can,
Yeah, for sure. And Scruffy is same guy. He transitioned with his grandsons, and I don't have any sons. I got daughters, and they don't want anything to do with racing. So, Cole's the next best thing. But yes, I did that same thing. I remember, and you see all those things evolve. Scruffy scratched and clawed his way to get where he got, right?
Yeah.
And there's so many stories that we could go on and on about. But back in the day, we didn't have those little swiper cards to get in the motel rooms. They had a key with a little triangle diamond-looking plastic tag on it, and they kept the room on it. Well, I always kept that, dude, and wrote on what town and what hotel that was, and we had a bucket in the truck. And if we just had a race and going from one racetrack to the next overnight, we'd roll up to that motel, knock on the door, and if nobody came, open the door in, go have a shower, get ready, go back out in the truck and leave. Right. And many times we did that. So, there's so many stories that we can talk about just like that. But, just like we're talking about, going back to last year, that when I got hurt,
Yeah.
I had to find a driver, and me and Bergman run the first race together and won, and then he didn't. I'm not sure what happened there. I don't think there was any ill will. I just think that he felt like he would be better off in his team or whatever. I'm not really sure, but me and my wife sit because at the end of the day, I don't own this team, but Todd lets me run it as my own team. So,
Yep.
I do run the stuff by him of who we're going to hire or whatever. But
Yeah.
I told my wife, I said, I want to hire a driver that would sleep in the truck like I did, that with no showers or anything for 3 days, 3 races in a row, never took a shower, dirt in your eyes, and that wants it that bad. And that's where that Hank Davis drove she knew Hank as a kid, and she's like, this kid here will do it. I mean, she's the one basically hired him. And, we won some races, and now look, he's evolved. He's in Shannon Wheatley's car in Washington driving the 45 car. So those are the kids that,
Yeah.
and that's why I brought up what I brought up about Cole. Everybody thinks he comes from the Tarleton money and rich and this, that, and the other, and maybe he is, maybe he isn't, I don't know. But I felt like he deserved a shot because of what he done on the racetrack. And
Yeah.
that's, all the social media stuff and all the stuff that people do now to get it on, and, bringing sponsor money and all that stuff, which I didn't have any money to bring. So I felt like I had to win races to make it happen. And I don't know how I got off on all this, but that's what I like about the racing part. I don't want someone, maybe if we didn't have any money, and if Cole wanted to bring some money, that's cool. But at the end of the day, that ain't the way I wanted to do it. I want a kid that's got a fire in his belly like I did. And that's where I guess where we're going back. I guess where I got sidetracked there, but Scruffy was that guy. He's still that guy. What are you talking about? No shower, if there's no place to shower, ain't no big deal. Just go to the next racetrack. And, and it's unfortunate that some of us had to take that route to get to where we are, but because there was other guys that, slept in beautiful motels every night and all that, but it wasn't me.
There's a guy watching at the moment. We often talk about great Australian exports, our guys that have come over to the US and been successful. And of course, we mentioned, Brooke and Max Dumsney and Kerry Madsen and Linton Jeffrey and Ian Madsen and Skip Jackson. And the list goes, Peter Murphy, and the list goes on and on. But there's a guy called Jamie Moyle that really deserves a big credit as well for not only the way he raced. Everyone remembers the Snickers car. Like, that was super cool amongst other things, but his engine building prowess, he's one of the best engine builders in the US and has been, for a long time. So as an Aussie, I just wanted to credit Moyley, who's, been an important part of Australian culture. Just last weekend, Wayne, James McFadden went back to a local dirt kart club, near Tolma Speedway here. And he did some mentoring to some young kids, and we spoke at a dinner that night, and all the young kids were there just like this. And James told stories about how he would steal a towel out of a motel room and lay it on a toolbox inside the truck just so he could sleep some nights. And you think the kids were like, wait, you're standing on the wing at the Nationals drinking chewies and selling T-shirts and the crowd and the whole bit, but it's not always that glamorous.
No. And, I don't know anyone that's got rich off of sprint car racing. I know Steve Kinder does well, and he's not struggling, don't get me wrong, but he lives modest just like anyone,
Yep.
I mean, he drives I think what he's driving there is like an early 2000s pickup, he's not got a brand new pickup that he's riding around in and all that stuff. But no, it's everybody sees the glamour and all that, but they definitely don't see what we have to go through. But going back to Jamie Moyle, Jamie's a good friend of mine. I lived in Knoxville for 14 years, and Jamie does my 360 engines at the moment, which we're not racing 360s, but Jamie's a good mate of mine, and he's always, even though I'm not running his 410 engines, when like the other night we had a decent run, he always gives me a text message that a way to do it, mate, or whatever. There's always something. So but Jamie is definitely, not only Jamie. There's so many Australian guys. Brooke, Kerry, Ian, Skip, like all the people you've talked about, and I know I'm missing a bunch of them, but there's they're probably some of the most fierce competitors that I've ever raced against. I mean, I can remember me and Kerry going at it so much for the championship, and I'm going to say 07 or something, back and forth. and being buddies. You know, he would come hang out at my shop during the day,
Yeah.
or I'd go to his shop, and but on the track it didn't matter. You know, it was like all at it. But you know, it's just the Australian culture with sprint car racing has evolved a bunch, because the first time I came down under was, I believe it was 2001.
Mhm.
I drove for oh man, I just drew a blank.
Which car number and
Uh,
which state?
uh, Perth, 17 car.
Oh, Luch.
Luch Monty. Sorry, I couldn't
He
think
was
of Luch's
watching
name.
before. Yep.
Luch, drove for Luch, you know, and didn't know Luch Monty, didn't know much about the Australian racing, you know, any of that, you know, and went and drove for Luch, and we won the Australian Speedway title, the
Yeah,
Western Australia, or
yep.
however, whatever it was.
Yeah.
You know, we won and left there with a pocket full of money and thought, and that was cool. And then realized I just drove for basically the best team in Australia
Yep.
at the time. You know, they
Yeah.
were the, and I'm like, wow, I didn't put it all together till it was all over. And then I got to go back a couple more years again and drive for Luch, and me and Luch, you know, keep track of each other on Facebook a little bit, and I keep track of his team. But man, that was the, you know, that was the Valvoline car of Australia to
Yeah,
me. You know,
correct.
after, but not knowing the culture of Western Australia, and you know, like you said, you see in Oklahoman magazine, you see this, that, and the
Yeah.
other, but never really. And so I didn't, and being a dumb Okie, I guess I didn't ever think I'd ever go to Australia. Funny story about that is Gary Wright was supposed to drive the car.
Hmm.
No, I'm sorry. That's a different time. Paul McMahon was supposed to drive the
Right.
car.
Yes.
Something happened. Paul couldn't drive. They called me up and said, "You want to drive the car?" And I was like, "Yeah, I want to go to Australia." They said, "Well, you got to leave Monday." I don't have a passport.
Oh.
This is Saturday. This
Oh.
is Saturday. This is Saturday. And I'm like, I don't have a passport. Ooh. So got online, or I don't know. I don't even know if there was online, but I don't remember how we did it. But anyway, booked a flight to LA, end up backing their flights up, said, "Listen, I can't get out of LA till Tuesday." Flew from Iowa to LA, went to the federal building, filled out all the paperwork at 9 a.m. At 4:30 p.m., the lady walked out. I'm sitting outside, because that's what you did. You filled out the paperwork, and then you just sit outside and wait. And all day long, hundreds of people. And the lady come out and said, called my name, gave me a passport. Next day I was on the flight to Australia. So that's how my first Australian trip, you know. So like I said, I didn't know a lot about that Perth, you know, and I got to Perth, I'm like, this is the Knoxville Nationals. My God, this is beautiful, you know.
Yeah.
But you know, so I was in awe, but didn't know who Luch Monty was or any of that stuff. I mean, the guy put me in a 1 point some million dollar condo over the Swan River, and here I am, some stupid Okie that, you know, don't know what $5 is basically, and I'm like, my God, you know, these people must have a lot of money. I've never seen anything like this. But super good people, and
Yeah.
treated me really well, and you know, I've got to come over quite a few times. I think 6 or 7 times is all I've ever been over, but that's a lot more than most. But and then the other story was when I said Gary Wright. Gary Wright was supposed to drive for Brett Smith from Melbourne.
Yeah.
30, I believe the
39.
39 car. 30.
Yep.
And Brett and me and Brett are really good friends. Brett comes to the States and hangs out with me and stuff still to this day. And but he called me and he said, Gary Wright backed out on me, and I want you to come. And I was at the Chili Bowl. I'd raced the Chili Bowl on Saturday night, and he called me at like 1 a.m. And I said, yeah, I'd love to come. He's like, all right, fly you out on Monday. I said, okay. I drove from Oklahoma to Iowa because my passport was in Iowa.
Oh, wow. Yep.
Did the laundry, got my suits washed, packed all up, and was out of there back to Melbourne on Monday. And so most of the time, other than it's just been crazy timing how I've got to come to Australia and race, but been pretty successful and had a lot of fun there, and got to go to, got to race in Sydney and Warrnambool, and Mount Gambier is the worst place ever. They could take that and mow it down for all I care. I hate Mount Gambier.
Hey.
But Perth, it's horrible. I don't even know. There's nothing I can compare it to here.
Just
Soccer
because you
field,
went
baby.
bad, just because you went bad doesn't mean it's a bad place, Johnson. Just get back in
And
your.
that's exactly what it was. I stunk up the place, but as an American race car driver, or as telling the fans that are watching, if there's any place you ever want to go watch a race out of the country, there's it's amazing. Perth
Yeah,
is a spotlight, for sprint
yeah,
car racing, and the beautiful place, beautiful city.
yeah.
It's amazing. So it's way, got to get back there someday. My wife's never been to Australia, and we've had a couple of times that we've talked about going, but there's always something that comes up, like getting sick or getting hurt or whatever. So
Yeah, I'm from Western Australia, and when you phone God from Perth, it's a local call, Johnson. Just so you know. Mike Roberts is saying here, who drives better in St. Louis, Wayne or Mike Roberts? And then he's saying no better driver coming home from any track unless the sun comes up. And the great Doug Clark is tuned in as well. Mate, 2 years ago, I got very excited hearing you were going to run Silver Crown cars because to me, the sprint cars and Silver Crown is pretty damn cool. So I was like, oh, that's cool. It's fairly late in your career, but let's do this. That didn't kind of pan out for you, but at the time, that must have been an incredible thing for you.
yeah, I can't thank Todd and Kelly for giving me the opportunity to do that. It was something that I always wanted to do. I remember back when Donnie tried it and Jeff Swindell did it, and they were pretty successful, and this, that, and the other. But I've always thought those cars were really, really cool. And Brian Goss, a friend of mine from Denver, Colorado, let me drive one of his pavement cars at IRP, and the Silver Crown cars were there at the same time. My first time ever on pavement since go-kart days, many, many years ago. And I took his backup car, and I think we run 11th or something from the back. And I thought, man, this is so cool. Got to get me one of them Silver Crown cars. So I went back and got on the phone. I was like, Todd, man, those cars are so cool. We got to get one of those. And he's like, well, yeah, well, just order it. Get whatever you want if you want to try that out. And still to this day, I love it. And he hated it, which unfortunately with my bad arm now,
Yeah.
I couldn't drive it anyway. But he hated it. I loved it, and I only got to run 5 or 6 races, and we pretty successful. We didn't win a race, but we broke a motor at the Coin and had to change engine to start dead last and run 7th from the back, and got hard charger there. And then I think I run 6th or 7th at Madison on the half mile on the pavement. And but I tell you what, one of the hardest crashes I ever took was in a pavement Silver Crown race at a test session at RP. Man, I hit the wall a ton.
I went to the
Oh,
Springfield Mile just during the week and hung out with Flea Ruzick once and just stood up in that tower in turn one and just closed my eyes and just imagined, what it would be like running a Silver Crown car around those kind of places. I love that you're so passionate about the sport still, Wayne, after all these years, and that you probably found a new lease on life with how this is all working out. With Cole, obviously the Two Cs racing team is such a pivotal part of everything you do. Without car owners, mate, we got nothing.
yeah, for sure. They're, Todd is only like 8 years older than me, 9 years older than me, and I call him Daddy, Big Daddy. I call him on the phone, hey, Big Daddy, what's going on? And I knew Todd way, way back in the day, and like 30 years ago or more. And me and him got hooked back up in 2012 after I got hurt in 2011. 2010, I got hurt with my leg, and I was trying to build my own team back up because I didn't feel like anybody was going to give me a chance
Yeah.
after being hurt. So I built my own team back up and was making that happen. And then he come along as a sponsor, and that's how it all evolved. And that's all the way back to the 2C team. But we've been together for 2011. So what is that? 14 years we've been together, and he's we're family. Like, he's here with his motorhome at Steve's, and we're hanging out. And he's retired now, and he's going to all these races. And he's funding all this stuff, and without him, I would be nobody. I would have my team or my career probably would have ended a long time ago. But he believed in me, and he trusts me with the way I spend his money and the way we do it, and I don't understand it because I love the racing part of it, but I'm like, man, these motors are
Yeah.
how much now? and it's like, just get 5 of them, whatever you need, and I'm like, it's amazing to me. And but they got it, they got it bad just like we do, and just on a different level, and but without car owners and sponsors and all this, none of this can happen. And even this, just hanging out, and that's really how it all works out. People, and I'm sure Valvoline and all the stuff that Steve got back in the day, or whoever, there was a bigger picture how they made that happen. But most sponsorships that I've ever been involved with, or people that I've been involved with, is relationship.
Yep.
Buddies, or this buddy met this buddy, and we all got, heck, next thing you know, we're having a beer, and and all that. But Todd and Kelly are just, they own a business, and he's loved sprint car racing his whole life, and he's always wanted a World Outlaw team. He gave me a chance at 50 years old when he could afford to do it.
Yeah.
And we stunk it up because I felt like, we just didn't have the right team, of course, one, but, I was on my way out, and, to give me the opportunity now to run his team and make it my own, and as I hire Cole or whatever, it's pretty amazing to have those kind of people. And I can't say enough about them. They're without them, my life would be completely different. I'm sure I'd probably be working at McDonald's or something, but running the drive-through.
Let's not even go there. I knew you and I'd be able to BS for over an hour when an Oklahoman and an Aussie get together, and we're not even going to have the conversations we have on the infield at Knoxville, because that's a different time for a different story. Real quick, what happened in September 2014 from a race perspective? You should remember this because I'm getting a message about it. It was a pretty good.
You got to realize I'm getting old and forgetful. Mm-hmm. September 4th. Oh yeah, yeah, I got it. Phil Durst put up a bunch of money at I-80 Speedway.
Yep.
And you had to win both races to get the bonus. It was an ASCS race. The first night paid $3,000 to win. Second night paid $5,000 to win. But if you won both races, it was a $50,000 bonus. And we won the first night. And it's the craziest story. And this story could go forever, but I'll try to make it short. But so there was a truck stop across the street from I-80. I don't know if you remember that little truck stop over there.
Yeah.
But we just slept in the toter home because what we did, got the car out, was going through the motor maintenance and everything, and found a push rod that's chewed up on one end. And the other motor I had wasn't quite as good as this one. And I'm like, I really want to run this engine because I don't think I can win with that other engine. So Charlie Fisher was doing my engine at the time. I rang him up and I'm like, mate, this thing's all chewed up on one end. Can I just take one out of the other engine? And he's like, no, they're different lengths. He said, just take that push rod, put it in a drill, get you some sandpaper, and just sand to the end of it. It'll be good. And then just put it in, set the lash. So I put that in there like that. And by God, with about 10 to go, I get to lead in the feature. And for 10 laps, I could hear that push rod. For 10 laps in a row, I could hear that push rod. I couldn't hear anything, but in my mind, that push rod was getting ready to throw out of this motor, and I was not going to win the $50,000, right? And so we ended up getting the race, winning the race, and winning the money. And Phil Durst, he's the one that put all that up and everything. And everybody's hooting and hollering and having a beer. We're having a great time in Victory Lane. And he walks up to me and taps me on the shoulder and hands me another, I don't remember now, but I want to say it was $3,000 or $4,000 in cash. And he's like, here you go. I'm like, what's this? He's like, well, I was going to give you this if you didn't win it, but you won it. Hell, I'm going to give it to you anyway. So it ended up being like $62,000 or something. And biggest win of my career, and that was a pretty cool race. I don't know who asked you that, but something you asked me a while ago, and I know we're probably running over time, but Mike Roberts asked you about who's the best truck driver or best driver. Well, I don't know how it all began, but somehow he got a van from McCroskey, and we were going from Knoxville to Peevely. I don't know if I was racing or we were just going to watch. I don't remember how it all worked out, but we're going down I-55, and the truck in front of us loses a trailer. It comes off. It's just like a 16-foot lawn trailer, and here it comes at the van, and Mike's driving. And believe it or not, he missed it. And that's what he's talking about. He didn't hit the trailer. The trailer hit the guardrail, bounced around, everything. that's what Mike's talking about. But so many of those memories. Like I said, we could talk for hours on hours. But I'm sure Mike's still watching or whatever. But
Yeah.
he still ain't the best. He's still not the best driver though. Hell, I'm not even sure that I could probably announce better than him too.
Shots fired. Shots fired. Mate, it's always a blast catching up with you, Wayno. Thank you so much for your time tonight. The Knoxville Raceway, we didn't even get to talk about stuff I want to talk about with Knoxville, but it's such a phenomenal place. They put everything they have back into the facility now. Of course, the Albor building as well in turn 2 is going to just make it even next level, but the improvements constantly and the mind process of the people that run the raceway think, how can we make this better? They don't sit back and go, oh, it's the Knoxville Nationals, people are going to come. They're like, how do we make this better? Skydivers, flags up on the national anthem cars, bringing the drivers for the A main down the Avenue of Champions, the big drivers meeting before the A main, all that incredible stuff. I'm so proud of the people that wear the badge of honor that is that shirt there. And it's a special place. And anytime you roll in there, you have to feel that.
Yeah, you walk in, I get goosebumps still to this day, and I used to live a mile up the road, but it is a change. And those, it's amazing to me how it has evolved. And I think, having the NASCAR truck race helps some, because they've seen how a little bit of that works or whatever. But man, I just, as a race fan, and I know the thing sells out and everything, but I'm almost 54 years old, and I'm not even racing the car now, but we rolled through there last week or 2 weeks ago for the Outlaw show. Yeah. And I get goosebumps, hair stands up on my arms, and it's just, Knoxville's I don't even know how you say it other than it's just near and dear to my heart. And the people, when I moved there, they all took me in as family, and, you just walk through the pits now, or even on Facebook or whatever, they all just message you, and it's still got lots of people that are involved with that. And it's just a cool place. And I don't even know how to explain it, but if you've never been, you got to go. Yeah. I don't know where you're going to sit, but you got to go.
It's the town, Wayne. It's the town and the people, mate. That raceway is cool, but it's the community. It's the county. It's Indianola just down the road that way. It's Pleasantville just down the road that way. It's Pella, Rich Knoxville, as I call it, Tony Bockoven's home, and Craig Ford's. It's the town. Mate, so good to catch up with you. Good luck on the rest of the tour with Cole, who's doing. I call Cole the taller, more handsome-looking Macedo, and he likes that. And then
before you let me go, I got one thing.
Yeah.
So I was watching Perth over the winter.
Yeah.
When he was driving, I can't remember who he was driving.
Yep.
But anyway, Funky Cole Medina.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
He hates that, by the way.
Oh, good.
He hates it. So anyway, my car owner's wife, Kelly. So I don't know, it might have been the first or second. I think it was the first race of the year. He walks in the trailer, she blares that, because I've already talked to him about it, because we were talking about letting her in the car. I was going to instead of putting Macedo on the nose cap.
Yeah.
Because there's already a Macedo, right?
Yeah.
I said we need to put Funky Cole.
Yes.
Oh, but yeah, so he hates it. Just so you know, he hates it, and we just give him so much grief about it. But I think it's cool. But he didn't grow up in that area. He don't know anything about Funky Cole Medina.
No, that was at the Classic, mate, that we started doing that, and I got the boys to start playing, because I think it's a no-brainer. Funky Cole Medina even sounds like that,
Yeah.
Cole, we're using it.
Yeah, but he's a little funky too. So
good point. Well, so have you met his crew chief?
My wife's laughing over here.
I bet. Well, it wouldn't be the first time she's laughed at you in your motorhome.
Oh, that's right. Every night.
Yes. Good to see you, mate.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me on. We'll have to do this again soon.
Oh, mate, I love it. Great to talk.
Can't wait to see it in Knoxville, where we can share those other things we talk about.
Love it, mate. See you soon, eh?
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me on.
Bye, buddy. I'll never have you on, mate.